Before you yell at me, I moved it. She always yells at me respectfully, by the way. No. So far.
Don't push it.
Exactly. It's 1 o'clock, so I'd like to open the Harwich Housing Trust meeting. And on the agenda first is the reorganization. And Joe, since I'll put you in charge of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Pro Tem, as we'll say. So first of all, good afternoon and welcome to technically the new members with Bob Spencer, if I got it right.
You got it.
Hallelujah. And Larry Ballantyne. For those who did not hear an earlier announcement, Larry Ballantyne now serves on the trust as the designee of the town administrator. His term began May 17th and runs coterminously with my appointment as town administrator in Harwich. And so Larry has asked me to preside over your reorganization. So I will tell you that as a justice of the peace, I can do it for that reason only. And so that way the three of you can make motions and seconds and what have you. So then what you'd want to do is, according to your trust documents, there is a chair and a vice chair. It does say that the town administrator shall serve as chair, but it also says there can be a designee. I have not weighed in on whether the administrator's designee should be the chair. I think that's something for the three of you to decide or not decide and just make motions. Having said all of that, are there any motions for the position of chair of the Board of Trustees?
I nominate
Bob?
Larry Ballantyne.
All right. There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for Larry Ballantyne to be nominated. First, Larry, do you accept the nomination?
I do. I'm grateful for the support.
And then are there any other nominations for position of chair? All right, hearing none, I would then just ask then, is it the unanimous acclamation of the trust to have Larry Ballantyne serve as chair of the trust?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
All right, so that is unanimous acclamation, 3-0. And then before he takes the gavel, are there any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Brendan Lowney, please.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, and since you seconded, Brendan, I understand you accept the nomination.
Yes.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, I would then ask the trust again, is it your intention to fill that by unanimous consent?
It is.
All right, that's unanimous consent, 3-0. And if you want, you can identify a clerk of the trust.
Okay, we only have one left here right now. So
Let me duck
nominate
down.
Bob.
And that was moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. And Bob, do you accept the
Accept the
nomination? Thank you.
nomination.
No other nominations? So then I would ask the trust, do you accept the nomination by unanimous consent?
Yes,
All right,
Yes.
and that's 3-0. Mr. Ballantyne, I turn it over to you to chair your meeting.
thank you. Before we go into the business, I did want to read a letter from Judith Underwood that I received a few minutes ago. And it says Clerk Mitchell, town clerk, that's who these letters go to. As of today, Friday, March 19th, 2023, I am formally resigning from the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust, of which I am a founding member and have actively and wholeheartedly supported since 2018. I'm very proud of the fact that as a trust, we work together to initiate the siting of affordable housing on Sisson Road adjacent to the Harwich Junior Theater, who are welcoming the proposed project. I'm further proud that the trust is able to purchase the significant Marceline property from Jimmy Marceline's conscientious and generous family members in June 2021. This piece of property, if allowed to move forward, and indeed is now sold, will afford the town of Harwich a significant amount of affordable housing. It has come to my attention by citizens of Harwich, not by the Board of Selectmen, that I am to be put off the trust come July 1. This public disregard for volunteers is unbecoming and inexcusable. Because of the egregious behavior of those elected to serve this town, I'm not comfortable attending the next few meetings and am resigning. Respectfully submitted, Judith. This is a hard letter to read because it is strong criticism of the actions of the Board of Selectmen, which I was part of at the time. And I chose to read it because we could all improve. And as we state over and over again, that we run by volunteers. I see Mary, she talked about it all the time. I think introduces every board with potential nominees. So, and I see Jeff in the background. So I did read that because no one's immune to improvement. So I wanted to read that letter. And we'll, our promise now is to start a new beginning and move these projects forward as quickly and as efficiently and as accurately as we can. So with that, we'll go to new business. And I welcome our new trustee, Bob Spencer.
Thank you.
Welcome, Bob.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask you just to give us, I know you have a great background, maybe not all your background, but the shortened version of it.
The most relevant part of my background is that I've served for over 30 years as a Habitat for Humanity volunteer. I've helped to build affordable housing in Connecticut. I've built affordable housing in Vietnam. I've built affordable housing in Mexico. And it is a very big, special part of my heart. So I'm glad to have this opportunity. And also, let me say that it's an honor for me to be completing Larry Brophy's term of office.
Amen.
And I appreciate that very much.
Great background, and as you acknowledge, you have he set a high bar, so I'm sure that's good, though.
I'll try to
Gives
reach
you something to shoot for.
Yep.
Have you had a chance, Brendan, I guess it's you and I have read the minutes?
Yes.
And,
Could I do a motion, please?
please.
Motion to vote and approve meetings from April 23rd, 2023.
And I second those. Any comments from the audience, or if not, all in favor? Aye, and I take you
I think I
abstain.
should abstain.
Yes, please. Old business, we invite Greg Winston to, and I see Bob here and some others to talk about the High Oaks Village proposed Phase 4. And as you come up, we thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us. I know while you're getting prepared, Brendan and I have had some discussions because,
I quickly want to thank you,
yeah, go ahead.
Larry Valentine. I want to thank you very much for continuing to give of your life and your private time to the town of Harwich. You're an amazing man. You're an amazing man, and I'm so glad that you're here. And I am also so pleased that we have an opportunity to work together, Pine Oaks Village Homes and the Howard Affordable Trust. And sir, your history is amazing. Just amazing. Housing here in Harwich is difficult enough. I can't imagine trying to deal with affordable housing in Vietnam. As you know, I represent Mid-Cape Church Homes. Bob Doan here is our spokesperson, and we have the pleasure of having with us today our developer, Mr. James Perrine, who has quite a history here on Cape Cod with Yarmouth Gardens and with the redevelopment of the Mashpee Villages. So I won't go into any more detail. Our core group members are here, Deb Bassett and Al Eaton, and there you go. And I'll let Bob take it from here.
Thank you. This is a presentation, it's similar to what we did before. I've streamlined it a little bit, but it's just kind of a reminder of where we've been and where we're going. So 1980 was Pine Oaks Village 1, which is 60 units off Bank Street on John Nelson Way. It is for senior living, senior affordable housing. We then did, in 1990, Pine Oaks 2, which is attached to the same area, and that added additional 38 units, and that also included handicap access. And then 2003, with the help of the town on some land, we did Pine Oaks Village 3, which is 65 units off of Oak Street. So currently, we account for 49% of the town's affordable housing list. That's the SHI list. And that, Commonwealth does ask for 10% of affordable housing in each town. According to that, currently, Howard should be at 612 units, which would be the 10%. But we're currently at 333 units, or 5.4%. And as an organization, Pine Oaks Village Homes does want to continue our work and to be able to help Harwich meet their housing goals. So today's housing needs, it's definitely young families. We hear that more and more when people are talking to us. Municipal employees, healthcare workers that have, the CNAs and some of the healthcare workers that can't afford to live on the Cape, but, there is plenty of work here for them. Definitely employees of local businesses, and we will continue our goal of helping people with disabilities with accessibility units. And of course, we continue to serve senior citizens. We do have quite a few one-bedroom apartments that would be suitable for them, even though there are no age restrictions. So our vision of the future is a mixed income community. So we're going to have 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments and townhouses. We will have the local preference. We'll be asking for 70%. So on initial rentals, they would be from the local community. And we will have the accessible units. And again, all ages qualify, including the seniors. So we have talked about our main access will be from Queen Anne Road, which is obviously easy access to Route 6. We're going to have walking trails. The goal is to leave a considerable amount of property all around the edges as undisturbed, basically, other than, maybe putting in walking trails. Although there's quite a few walking trails through there now. And I know that's been, a lot of neighbors have addressed that, saying, gee, we're gonna lose all our walking trails, and definitely not. We do intend to have a central area. That would be a green area for a playground, but, a place where families can come and, probably have a gazebo there and things, for places to get together. We will have a community building. We found that was really successful in Pine Oaks 1, 2, and 3. We actually have 3 of them. That it not only has serves the purpose of the management office, so we have on-site management at all our properties, but it also allows little rooms to have additional events if someone needs to have a birthday party and their 2-bedroom apartment doesn't make it. They can use that facility and probably have a couple of those rooms, and for other services. So, and we will continue with a very strong management of the property like we do in Pine Oaks 1 and 2. So this is basically just showing where that property is located. Kind of dull here, but it's Queen Anne is boundary on 1, and you can see Queen Anne Road does meet with Main Street at a point, and we're right between that edge, touching both ends of the property, both on Queen Anne and Main Street. The Main Street, we are asking for Queen Anne Road access. We do have to do a traffic study probably this summer to determine what kind of traffic load there is. That's been one of the issues people have said is Queen Anne's, they go too fast, maybe too busy. And we do have the access to Main Street, but it is not our preferred access just because the road isn't as wide and there are a lot more houses in that area. But it is available for emergency access or for utilities and things like that. It's one of the things we'll be asking the town what they present or what they might like, and based on our traffic studies and things like that. This is just showing the entire land going from Queen Anne down to Main Street. We are placing all our units in the very middle of the property to allow for plenty of open space on the edges, as well as just keeping the units away from the neighbors. It's a little more close-up of it, showing the types of buildings.
Bob, can I ask you,
Yeah,
excuse me
yeah.
interrupting you, could you go back to the previous slide? Could you, you're showing a vernal pool there as well.
It's
And,
actually,
That's a grade of land.
It's a greater land, it's not a
No,
vernal
no,
pool?
no, there are. This is showing, to the north of us, a wetland, and this is on the state's property, and then to the south of us, in our property, there is an abandoned crab hole.
Here,
And,
Okay,
down
right,
here,
right,
and then in the middle,
and then this is the old bog.
okay,
But not, this is not a vernal pool.
okay. Well, the reason I wanted to emphasize that is that sometimes people get into a discussion of vernal pool of stopping development,
right,
but it can still add to the acreage to get us through the
Yes.
zoning.
absolutely.
And so it's a critical part of the discussion that people understand that it's not a yes/no decision, we can still use the space.
Right, right. No, and
Which
we-
you've done, so.
Right, and we have done the enviroronmental study on wetlands, and they've looked at different areas and have not found a vernal pool
Right.
on the area.
Good.
We had a botanist, we hired a botanist to come in, and they've completed their study now.
Okay.
So we do have, to the north, as Jim Perine was just pointing out, that is a vernal area. And then the cranberry bog itself is actually quite dry. No water discovered there, and just further to the south there is a vernal pool, but clearly not in our perspective, it's not in our scope at all. It's off our real estate mostly. And our idea is that, in actuality, as Bob referred to, walking trails are already in existence here. And Bob and I have met with one of the immediate abutters, and one of the things he likes most about it is that he saw all the flags up, and he said, wow, something's gonna happen here, I know it's going to change, but I really hope that people are thinking about workforce and affordable housing. This particular gentleman is more into workforce housing,
Right.
which is more complicated, but we'll get into that later. But anyway, yeah, we've studied this very well, and we're very fortunate that we have no issues with the wetlands.
Okay, thank you.
And so going to the next one, we have two types of buildings that we're proposing. A townhouse that has 8 units in it, those are the brownish ones together. And there'll be 4 3-bedrooms and 4 2-bedrooms at this point on the configuration. Then we have our larger building, which we call our lodge buildings, which are really geared for the 1 and 2-bedroom apartments. And they each do have a 3-bedroom that's fully accessible. Other areas, a center area with maybe playground and a green space I mentioned. Way to the right is our proposed septic treatment area and that back area. Then to the left, the pink is the community room, so it's kind of when you come in the entrance, it'll be the first thing you really see. In addition, to the north, we have some yellow blocks there, and these are some home ownership opportunities. Because, you know, in any plan, apartments are definitely needed, but there's interest in home ownership that's affordable. So that we're proposing maybe something there, not immediately, as well as down south. On the southern part, there's some triplexes there that could be home ownership. Again, with a discounted value that would be passed on to,
Is there any consideration that Habitat could be a partner?
Yes.
In those individual homes?
We've actually
Absolutely.
discussed that, and that's very, very in the forefront.
Right.
As you noticed, that there's a good swath of land to the south on Main Street, not on that map, very lower down, where we're more interested in less density. As Bob referred to, the Main Street is a more residential area, and it's more of a winding, more narrow road. And that, probably, I don't even know my lifetime, but that's where we want to go. That's where we want to go. Right now, we're working on developing this in 3 phases.
Right.
I'll let Bob take.
Right. So that's the basic property layout. And this is an example of the townhouse structure, how it would look. And oh, there we go. And that's our lodge building, and that's already been changed. We're trying to get some of the heaviness from the top, make it smaller. But that's very much still in process. in the design phase.
Bob, have you, has that design been presented at public discussions yet, outside of the Board of Selectmen?
Yes, we had, immediately after the selectmen's meeting, we had a butters meeting that
Okay.
next day. So we invited in the abutters and the abutters to the abutters to have, and plan to have other informational
Okay.
meetings. Yeah.
What was their view then of the structure of this?
Pretty much very positive, I think. Really, there was only, a couple people that just didn't like so much
Right.
there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we had a very positive response, and mainly because we worked with a couple of the neighbors in
Right, if you have
particular.
discussions first, that helps. doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, no, we wanted to inform the abutters as soon as possible, if, again, simultaneous, and
Right.
those are where we really learn a lot about what people like and whatnot. So I think you will have future ones on that, and maybe expand it to few more people that particularly live along Queen Anne Road, because, the traffic is going to be an issue for them, and that came up several times, was the traffic, so. So these are the, very concerned about the environment. So one of the things we're going to do is we are going to make these passive homes, passive house technology. So not only solar panels, but the orientation is all south-north. The envelope will be very strong, and we plan to use only electricity. We don't even plan to have any gas in there. That works, works for great air conditioning and heating. It's still a little early in for hot water, but that technology is here now, so that we could possibly do this without running gas lines or oil or any other carbon-based fuels. We definitely have to have a wastewater treatment plant for the nitrogen, capturing nitrogen, which we pointed out on the land. I don't think we're going to coincide with any sewering in that area, but if it happens, that could work out for both of us. Definitely going to protect wetlands, but based on our studies that we've done, we've already actually looked at some of the native species type protection. It is not right now under the jurisdiction or identified as being endangered species property, but that doesn't mean that we can't watch out for them, and particularly in the building phase, you have to set up barriers, sweep the area for anything that might be in danger. And of course, we're going to be doing a traffic study. And so here we have some new information, and I'm going to turn this over to Jim on some of the more statistics of what we're actually going to do.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize, everything that we're talking about today is preliminary. I think in the sense of giving you our ideas, but we're still working on the design a little bit. We're also working on the exact unit mix in terms of affordability and so on. But this gives you, I think, a pretty good idea. And for phase one, we anticipate a total of 88 units. 16 of those would be in the townhouses, and then the remainder would be in the large buildings. And we divide that into different income categories, so that each income tier, okay, is, for a given type of unit, would be restricted to someone whose household income was at or below the limit. For example, we're talking about the area median income, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but HUD determines what the area median income is every year. And then from that, and that's based on a 4-person household and so on. And then they say, here's how to calculate it for smaller and larger households. And within that, the 30% of the median, which is called, which is the very lowest income tier, that's someone earning up to 30%. So it'd be someone, collecting a certain, it could be disability income or something along those lines, or someone who's not able to work full-time for whatever reason. They would be, so we have a dozen units for, in that tier. I might add, the state requires us, as part of our financing that we'll be going for, to have a certain percentage that they set out. Right now, it's 13% in that tier. Then we have the next tier up, which is 50% of the median, where we've got 6 units. Then we have 60%. That is an area where we have the 60% tier, and it's somewhat sizable. That's because of tax credits. We're applying for the low-income housing tax credits that we're applying for, which will enable us to get private equity to build this. That requires that or that only funds apartments for households up to 60%. So all of these, this and the lower tiers can all be eligible for the tax credits. So our next tier is 80% and higher. And by higher, I mean it could be 80%, 100, or 120%. And those ranges would be, and we would have specific ranges. We just haven't had a chance at this point to say how should we divide it among those categories, and where is the need the greatest. So 30 units would be in that category. I might add, those units are harder to finance because we don't get the tax credits for those units. And even though the rents are higher, which enables us to carry a little more of a mortgage, it's still harder. And Mass Housing has come through with a program to help with a sort of additional financing for units in that group of above 60% and below 120%. So that's a total of 88 units. If we're looking at the project as a whole, we're basically, at this point, contemplating 3 virtually identical phases. So multiply these numbers by 3, and that's where you get to our total for the project, excluding the home ownership units that we hope to be able to build as well. So that's I might add too, we may find as we develop the first phase that there's a greater need for a certain type of unit or a certain income tier. We may adjust that later, but this really, right now, is certainly what we're contemplating. So the next slide, I just wanted to give you the actual information on the average area median income. These numbers, HUD just came out with the numbers on Thursday. So they come out once a year.
Brand new.
So,
Thank you.
so this applies for all of Barnstable County.
Thank you, Bob.
So it has it shows you the maximum income based upon household size. And so for, for a 60%, in the 60% tier, for a 4-person household, it's $69,000. Okay, that, just as an example, a single person in the 30% tier would have income no greater than $24,000. All right, the 120% tier is, is naturally somewhat higher. And we see there is a need certainly for people who, who earn a pretty good income, but still either can't find an apartment because they're all Airbnbs, or they're saving up for a house or something along those, or a condo.
For a house.
Yeah, and so we're looking at those higher levels as well. So for a family of 4 at the 120% tier, that's $138,000. So we're looking to see, you know, of those 30 units, how many should be in the 80%, 100%, or 120% tier. Now, at the bottom of this chart is what the rent limits would be for 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments in those various tiers. The rent limits are computed on the basis of 1.5 persons per bedroom. Now, I don't know any half people, but that's what we do. So that's what HUD, and so it basically is an average for an average, like a 3-bedroom apartment is based on 4.5 people. Okay, and so we find, you know, many of them are households with, it could be a couple and 2 kids, of different genders. It could be a single mom with a couple of kids. It could be a somewhat larger family, and that's why we have townhouses where there's a little more room to spread out, where the all but a couple of the 3 bedrooms are located. Anyway, these, I leave left the chart with you so that it may be handy for you in the course of your work just to have the current numbers in case anyone asks.
Yeah, it seems it went up quite a bit too. From
It
last
went up 6%.
6%, yeah.
And I might add, HUD capped the increase at 6%.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if the actual number went up more, and I doubt that, but they're looking at, we just came through a period of inflation. Okay, the inflation rate is a lot lower. We know that, by the way, wages and so on have not kept up. So it seems to me that 6% is probably it, kind of. And it's rare for it ever to go up that much, as you know.
If I may, Jim, Ollie, Greg, you're smiling. If you look at the table before then, where you have your
Yeah.
mix of,
Mm-hmm.
percent AMI or,
Yep.
based on your discussion, I presume that that actual mix will be based on sources of funding.
Exactly.
So that may change going forward if that,
It is, but it's based upon what I know about the sources of funding that we're likely
Okay.
to
so
apply
you're
for.
comfortable you can do that at this point?
Yeah.
This is Jim's field of expertise, and as you know, Bob and I, this came to the table, as he said, just now within the last 48 hours, and this piece of the presentation, this is all new knowledge. But we also have in the back of our minds that our goal, one of our stronger goals is that we have, of course, we have the experience with senior housing for 40 years, but our stronger goal is that we reach a level where we can actually provide housing to the workforce and get people into the workforce to be able to service the community and live in the community, which is something that hasn't happened in a long time here. And if you've followed at all as to what's going on the little Lafitas Island off the coast here, you'll understand that the VRBOs and all that are a major source of income, and that housing is almost, if you want affordable housing, go to Cape Cod. That's a bumper sticker on Nantucket. I swear to God, you can look it up. I don't even want to talk about it. But anyway, the thing is, what we really are looking forward to is to start a GoFundMe sort of charity fund, Friends of Pine Oaks Village Homes, so that we can sort of start to generate some enthusiasm for the younger families that need help, and we can't get the funding from the federal government or even the state, and so it kind of makes it a little more difficult for the housing that we want to provide for workforce people. And interestingly enough, very interestingly enough, the gentleman who's almost an immediate abutter, the most immediate abutter, I referred to him earlier, a wonderful man. He has incredible ideas about workforce people and how we would be able to house workforce people who have their their own small business. I mean, he's a plumber, one-man plumber, or he's a carpenter or a finished carpenter. So Bob and I are listening clearly. Whitney Wright is his name. He's a wonderful man. And he comes up with these ideas. Well, are you going to be able to have like a designated parking area so that if this man's a plumber, his truck's painted Whitney's Plumbing or something? Yeah, that's something we thought about. Didn't think, but now are thinking. So there's much more in our minds, but we really have to hone in on how we can finance this to get going and also provide the community. I mean, we still know that the elderly community in this town desperately needs more housing. I mean, we've got a waiting list of 6 years to get into our villages on Bank Street. So we know, and 3 or 4 years to get in on Oak Street. So we have to take care of the young families and the seniors. So it's complicated, but we're getting there.
So we have the schedule. You can't see that at all on there, but Jim will just kind of talk about what our schedule is for.
Yeah, I mean,
going
it's
over
not,
next year.
it's not a critical thing to read each line, but I just want to say we've got a site control, which is, which we have arranged site control in terms of we have all of the sites. One of them we've closed on, the others we have under binding agreements. We have done the bulk of our due diligence. There are still some things that will get done for example, as we complete our more detailed survey showing elevations and so on, and the exact locations of the buildings. Then we'll have the geotechnical work and couple of things like that done. And the governmental approval section is I think, pretty relevant in that, we've started with the community meetings. We anticipate having meetings every so often, some formal, some informal, for other folks in town throughout this process. We'll also be working closely with town departments. We've met with the town administrator and the relevant department heads, so that as part of this, we want to get their feedback as to what they recommend and so on. Now, we will be applying under Chapter 40B for zoning approvals, but we want to do it in a way that the town is behind us, that we have town support, and that we're addressing the concerns to the greatest extent possible of the neighbors and the town residents and the town officials. So we will be applying for our project eligibility letter from DHCD. That's the first step in the process for 40B, and that we have to get a little more work done on our site design, and then we'll submit there. And then following up with that, that is a process that takes them several months. And then, and during that time, we will continue to meet with the town officials. We'll talk particularly with the Conservation Commission, and also we'll have our traffic study done, so we'll be, dealing with the details of what needs to happen there. And then we apply for our comprehensive permit once we get the site eligibility letter, and it goes through the ZBA, the zoning board, and so that we'll hear when I think there's like a 90-day process that's incorporated into that. Because we're going 40B, we do not need to go to the Cape Cod Commission. We will be looking at MEPA, the Mass Environmental Policy Act. We have to make sure, or to see if we need to apply under that separately, and that's something if we do, then we go ahead and do it. There are a couple of provisions that we may or may not satisfy, and we won't know that just yet until we get more work done on the site design. And then we will be applying for a groundwater discharge permit in connection with the wastewater treatment facility. So those are the majority of the approvals that we need. We will be doing, once we have our approvals, then we'll go ahead with the acquisitions. And then we have our financing, which is on a separate but connected track. So we have a pre-application that's due in October, and we will have, we'll have the full one-stop application to the state, which will be due in mid-January sometime. And so that's something we need to have our zoning done prior to that, so that when we go in, we can say, yeah, we have what we need to proceed. And then the other things that we'll be doing are, we'll be coming to you to talk about funding. We'll be going to Barnstable County for the county has some home funds, which are ultimately federal funds, but they're administered by the county. We'll be we may be talking to other towns to see if they want to kind of join in, as has happened with Orleans and others. And then we'll be talking to the equity investors who might be interested in the tax credits, and we'll be talking about a construction loan, which would be from a bank. Our permanent loan most likely will come through Mass Housing, which is a quasi-state governmental agency that basically floats bonds to, so it's not taxpayer money, but it's that they will use for to give us a mortgage, a permanent mortgage. So there are a few other little bits of financing that I haven't mentioned that, we'll be going for, and also the sources change and the rules change pretty frequently, so if there's money out there, we're gonna look for it and find it. Because it does cost a lot of money, as you know, to build. So if, the other thing I want to point out with regard to the state funds is a lot of times, in fact, I'd say probably most often, developments don't get funded on the first go-around. Often it takes 2 or even 3 applications, and you can apply only once a year. So we don't know when we're going to get funded. We hope it's the first time around. We're going to have just the best possible application that we can.
And excuse me, Jim, that deadline is the end of the year? Is it pre-application time or
We have preliminaries.
preliminaries that starts at?
Yeah.
It's been, I should say, we've been warned, I've been warned that it sounds to some people in the community that this might be an aggressive plan, but we're going to do everything that we can to get through the zoning and all of the issues that we have to do with traffic study and so forth and so on, so that we don't miss any of these deadlines. I'm
Because
adamant
October is
about
a
it.
critical deadline.
I'm adamant about it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, if we, did you wanna?
No.
Okay, if we apply this coming January, I should say when we apply this coming January, if we get an award, we'll probably hear about it in May. This year, the awards were announced last week. So it's from the January applications. So it then takes 4 to 6 months to have a closing. Because then, at that point, you've got the credits. That's when the general contractor can get all the subs to really sharpen their pencils, which they don't want to do until you actually have the prospect of having money. You get the actual current bids from the various lenders, and then the final equity amount from the investor. And then you hope it all works. And if it doesn't, then you have to trim a little bit on the budget somewhere. But all of that, and then you get maybe 8 different lawyers agreeing on a set of documents that's very thick. And that means a closing probably in November or so of next year. And then construction would start the next day. And construction would take, for the first phase, probably 15 months or so. 15, 16, something in that range. And then we get to do the process over for phase 2 and phase 3. And meanwhile, as we do these phases and build out the infrastructure, then we'll be able to say, okay, we're now ready to consider the home ownership piece. Because we've got to have the roads in and that sort of thing. So, anyway, that's.
Thank you.
That's actually fantastic, Jim. You really did a great job, because we've had a hard time getting our heads around this aspect. Of course, Jim's been working with us since 2020, and this is his field of expertise, of course, and it's been awfully difficult for every one of us to get our minds around how we're going to finance this. But I will say, to our credit, Pine Oaks Village Homes and Big Cape Church Homes, our founding organization, if it hadn't been for the people on the board way back in the 70s, two of them actually attended our annual meeting last Wednesday, Paul and Helen Doan. But then, of course, Shirley and Dick Gomes, who've been working with us with me for a long time. Shirley's expressed an interest in working with us as a member of the board or an auxiliary member of the board. But all of this has been reasonably possible, because our organization is funded and well endowed. So we've been able to come up with the upfront costs for the architecture and for all of these studies that, as a municipal agency, you people weren't able to do it so quickly and efficiently. So we're moving forward rapidly, but we're a nonprofit, and not one of us in this room, meaning the 4 of us on the core group or the 12 members of our board, get paid a salary or a stipend. We are all volunteer.
Okay, thank you. Bob, you had a question?
I had a question about public transportation. What are the considerations there for this site?
There is a transportation kind of parking lot where I know some of the buses stop. That's out on Queen Anne. And we want to talk to the RTI, I think that's what it is, the Transit
Regional
Authority.
Transit Authority.
To see about their schedules and if there's any way they can modify, because currently nothing goes down Queen Anne Road. But it is something we want to work with them to see if there's something, and we may actually end up having a van to take people to transportation hubs at some point, possibly.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's definitely on our list of
I would assume.
how we could, because a lot of people there, they'll only have one car probably, and
Yep.
goes to work and needs to get groceries or whatever.
Yep.
So the, kind of moving on to why we're here before you. So basically, the first thing we would love is some kind of letter of support to accompany our eligibility letter for the 40B process. Then after that, of course, financial support. And this is kind of a question for you. There's been a lot of talk about what ranges you can afford of AMI, and I don't know where that has settled down to, or what you have, or what that's going to change. But obviously, we need money from down to the 30% all the way up to 120%. So we're not quite sure where, how much of that you might be able to help us with.
Okay. Well, first, a letter of support. I think we certainly want to do a letter of support, and I would suggest if we should do that formally. But as for guidance, what you guys can help us draft a letter that you feel comfortable with. Because I know it sounds like, Jim, you've been the brain power behind this, huh, Greg and Bob?
I don't know if I go that far, but.
And then I think we're still working on the financial aspect as well. I think,
Sure.
You've talked to Brenda, I know he invited you in here, you've made input, and,
Yeah, I mean,
well, I was gonna say, we want to support you any way we can.
Yeah.
Make a long story short.
and as you know, we're focused on the shine list, so,
Right.
80% or less.
Right.
We want to make sure we hit those numbers, that's what we're really focused on. And it seems like most of the units are going to be in that wheelhouse.
Probably.
So that was very
Probably
exciting to
quite.
see when I
Yeah.
started the board of selectmen meeting and
Mm.
today, so it's great.
Yeah.
So, Bob?
The local preference
Yes,
is a critical issue.
Yes, it is.
And everybody wants to know.
right.
How long does that last
It's for the initial renting.
for the initial?
So it's, and it's a lottery-based system.
Okay.
But different pools that you put in if they live or work in Harwich would go into that first pool that would be drawn.
Okay.
And there's a lot more detail than that, but once you've done that, then it's basically just follows regular fair housing rules. Kind of the next person line gets in a queue and to see what they qualify, and it's a waiting list after
So it would be a 70% in the first phase, 70% in the
the
second
second
phase?
phase.
Mhm.
Yes,
70% in this, yeah.
yeah,
In each round,
for each round.
Yeah.
in the
Yes.
first round.
That's correct.
And Bob,
It's just
give-
that the re-rentals,
Mhm.
we can't do, no longer follow. that.
Right.
He can give you a brief history of where we're at today.
Well, yeah, our experience shows that Pine Oaks Villages, it's 80%, 88% of all our tenants have a connection to Harwich. They went to school here, they lived here, they have children living here, or they formerly worked, just worked here. So that's, we find that interesting in that people they want to go where they have friends and family. So I think that we will continue that type percentage hopefully in the future.
Getting back to the support letter, will you send a draft of that to Brianna, our housing advocate? Brianna, do you have questions or comments on the presentation?
No, I've heard them present a bit before, and I think it's great, and I'm fully here to help you guys in any way and support you and meet with you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Any comments from the audience? Let me ask a question. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. We're going through, our own process of RFP and developers. And how did you depend on Jim to come back with a concept? How much of forethought on the details did you prescribe to the,
Well, we
Jim?
knew what we wanted. We didn't know what our land was at the time. So, but we interviewed various developers that specialize in this, and it just turned out Jim, with his recent Yarmouth Gardens and his approach to things, that we selected Jim to work with us. And our first project was actually over in Brewster, the Millstone project, that we tried to respond to.
yeah, getting into the details, you knew what you wanted. Is that in terms of the numbers of one bedroom, two bedroom?
No, none of that.
That was
No,
left to
that
the,
all comes, that falls out from the financing, basically.
and it falls out later on, because,
Yeah, it really does. We just knew we wanted to move forward with some form
right,
of housing.
okay.
That
That'll
was
inform
basically-
our discussion, because we
And
want to be sure.
did, I
that-
will have to say, regrettably had at the last minute to withdraw from that. We weren't able to present our proposals for timing. We had some timing issues, but also our costs were coming in a little higher than we thought would be acceptable. And it was, regrettably, we had to withdraw. But the fact that we withdrew didn't take away all the knowledge that we gained the entire time that we were trying to answer
Right.
that RFP to Town of Brewster. So
Right.
that's, I think, what's made us super strong now, because we really know
We know-
so much
We
more
worked
than
out a
what
lot.
we knew
We
then.
we
Yeah.
certainly know the pitfalls.
Yeah.
But
We do.
at least as far as that's
Well,
concerned.
Hopefully, we're smart enough to learn from you then,
Yeah,
rather than
the real
repeat.
key is, it's very competitive. These funds are competitive, and, one, if you want to get it at all, but if you want to get it earlier, you have to have very compelling reason, and you have to be very efficient with the use of the money.
Yeah.
And so that, that's why we have the mix of townhouses and the lodge building, which is lower cost per unit. Townhouses are very expensive, but you need both, really. So that's one of the issues that, we'd love to build everything beautifully, like a Winstead Hotel. We can't afford to do that, but we'll try.
Yeah, we are pinpointing some architectural details. We've cleaned up those buildings a little bit.
Okay, Bob,
Larry, I'd like to make a motion that
Sure.
we craft a letter of support.
okay, second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye, so you can do that, as I said, Senator Brianna,
yeah,
or,
we'll do
you know,
that.
who's a
We'll,
housing
we'll give you an
advocate.
outline as to what we need, we feel
Right.
should be covered, and then you can take it from
We
there.
can take it from there,
That's
that'd
great.
be fine.
Yeah. Thank you so
Now,
much.
I have, if I may, I have just a couple of questions too, in terms of, we'll be coming to you with our hands out to help with funding the project. What sort of, I don't know, what sort of things, you know, what are your parameters? How, do you have a process? Is there do you do pre-development work? In other words, some of the preliminary work, because we're spending, you know, basically hundreds and hundreds of thousands to get it to the point where we'll be able to apply for the credits. And for the, you know, certainly permanent financing, but I don't know what, you know, what sort of ranges there'd be, what the,
And quite frankly, I
process
don't have an answer to that right now.
okay, well,
We'll
fair
we'll
enough.
we'll have to sort that out and talk. I see we have Kathy from CPC, we always go to them for financial
Yeah.
help.
I know that Yarmouth Commons, when they did
And,
theirs, and correct me if
yeah.
I'm wrong, but I believe they did 69 units, it was $30,000, and I think the town gave it after completion of the project. I don't know where it would be in the beginning process, but we'd have to discuss that, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I know,
that's-
I mean,
It's all relatively new to us as well, so.
yeah, with Yarmouth Gardens, we got some funding from the town also. That was 40 units, so it was a smaller project, and it was, I think we got 20,000 at acquisition,
Okay.
and then we got the rest, which was another 14,000 something
Okay.
at,
That's per
at
unit,
the end,
right?
per unit, yeah,
So that's good to know, so maybe,
yeah,
you know,
Yeah.
when the time comes,
Mhm.
you know what you're asking.
yeah.
And it might be interesting for you to know, I'm not sure if we made it completely clear, but in actuality, this entire parcel that you saw on one of the earlier slides, all of the land designated between Queen Anne Road and Main Street, all of those parcels, amalgamated parcels and deeds, we've spent years, but a concentrated year working with title attorneys in Boston, Moriarty, Marsh, and Golder. Dick Golder works very closely with us and Jim, and then our own attorney here in Yarmouthport is working with us. But it might be interesting to point out that every single parcel that we've shown you is under agreement, so that the stipulations are all there. The goal, of course, is the financing, the final financing to make the buildings, you know, to let this happen. But we've also taken the risk of closing on two of the parcels already. One we're about to close on, and one we've already closed on. Those were risky parcels that we had to move quickly on. The others, it's really nice to compliment the people that are working with us, the Hall families, the MS Hall Trust, and others who are patient, and they're working with us. But everything is under agreement, so that we aren't going to lose anything that we put together.
Well, I think to sum up, we want to work with you, and if we can help, yeah, we certainly, so let's keep in touch,
Yes.
Yeah.
and very much appreciate your appearing today, and we want to continue the discussion.
That's great. Well, thank you
thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's our existing brochure
for the Okay, village.
I
thank
only
you.
brought one, I should have brought more.
You should have.
I may have more than Thank you.
Fine. Thank you. Moving to the next item on the agenda, Jen Golson, and you can join us, please, in brief introduction, and then we'll talk. You haven't talked to us for a while, or the Housing Trust. for a
I
while.
know, I'm so happy to be here.
How you doing?
So, I just have a question for you all. I do have a presentation, but I also have a working session to conduct with you.
Yeah,
And I was anticipating we might have about an hour or so together, and I don't know if that's too much to ask, given that you just spent an hour talking with these folks.
I'm good for now.
Yeah, we're good.
Let's go ahead with it while
Okay,
you're here.
all right, wonderful. And I hear that this will change my slides, so let me see if that will work. Perfect, thank you. All right, so we'll go over, I just want to really re-anchor us back into what we're doing. It's been a few months. I think the last time I was here was in January for a tour of the sites that the trust owns. And I want to anchor us a bit to the schedule. We've reworked the schedule based on the slowdown. We do have a community forum coming up in June 27th. So I want to talk a little bit about all of that and where we are in the process, what we want to do today. And then back in December, we actually updated, years ago when we started this before COVID, before the pandemic rather, we used your housing production plan, which was relatively current at the time that we started this project, and we pulled out the housing needs that it had found. Well, as part of this new revised scope, we updated that for you. We didn't update the whole housing production plan, but we pulled some of the key facts and gave you some new figures. Those are a little bit out of date now because there's new ones available now, but it's a moving target. So, but we did that back in November and December, and we gave that to you in November, or in December rather. So I just have one slide to just say the bottom line on that analysis, and then. Back in 2020, when we were first working on this strategic plan process for you, we called them visionary interviews. I don't remember who we interviewed. It might have been you folks. But we interviewed, I think, 6 or 7 folks that were identified by the trust as having some, special knowledge area or just been around and kind of understands where the community is. And so I don't think we ever got to share those with you. We may have sent you a summary years ago, but I thought I'd just revive that and just show you the bottom line just to connect that prior work we had done. And then I want to facilitate this little working session with you, which you have a little handout for. And then after that, I want to just talk about plans for the June forum, make sure we're all on the same page. I want to talk about a couple different ways we can go with the design. So does that sound all right?
Terrific.
Okay, good. All right. So in terms of what we're doing, a strategic plan is really allowing you already have day-to-day things you're dealing with, right? So you just had a development, a concept come to you for some support. And so you're not going to stop doing that while you do this process, but at the same time, this process will help you clarify things like, do we want to fund pre-development work? When will our money come in? How do we make a decision about that? Do we have an application? Do we have a formal process? Do we, and there's lots of choices there. So this plan we're working on with you will help you answer some of those questions, including what area median income you want to go up to. If you want to stick with the 80% AMI, focus on getting things on the subsidized housing inventory. We can talk about all of that in this process.
Is it possible to turn the lights off?
So you can see
just
that a
on
little
that
better?
side of the room?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't,
Yeah,
yeah?
I think we're actually in the darker now.
camera, so when we show.
Oh, it doesn't, gotcha. Okay, all right.
That's fine.
Maybe that's a little better.
That's better, thank you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, my eyes are pretty old.
Okay, and so some of the things we'll be asking you throughout this process is, if you look back on, just imagine we jump forward 5 years from now. This will be a 5-year plan. Sometimes we do 3-year plans, so you can decide if this is a 3-year plan or a 5-year. Often it's 5-year. So at the end of that time frame, when you look back on the 5 years of your service, what will make you really proud? What will you be able to say, well, we accomplished this and this and this? And working backwards in that way, that will help us clarify, well, what priorities do you want to focus on? There are lots of things that a housing trust can do and that are eligible. You have limitations of funding, you have limitations of time, your volunteers, of course, you're staffed, which is wonderful, but there are certain, limitations. You can't possibly do everything you probably want to do. And so that's what we're going to try to help you do, is narrow down what should you be spending your time, your effort, and your funds on. All right. Well, the other thing I guess I'll just say at the end is, how do you want to operate? And so you have 3 members right now. I think it's a 5-member board, so hopefully you'll get a few more members over the course of the coming months. I'm not sure what your time
We will,
frame is. Good.
because we have a 4th member that has been appointed by the Board of Selectmen starting in the next month.
Oh, wonderful.
And then the Board of Selectmen has a member they need to appoint. So I assume, Mary, we have Jeff left, but I presume that'll be on the agenda soon?
Correct. I would think when we reorganize, that would be one of the spots.
One of the spots, so
Wonderful.
Probably a week from today.
Perfect.
so we'll come up to 5 board members.
So is the
5-member
4th board member here who has appointed but not?
No.
Not
Her,
here?
her
Okay.
term, officially starts July 1st.
All right.
But now with the resignation, perhaps
We
that
can
can
move
be
it up.
back.
I see, good. Well, I just wanted to offer, I know Larry and I had a lovely conversation when you first came on. I'm happy to do that with the new members as well, just to catch them up to speed,
Good.
if that's something you think would be helpful.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, good. And so part of this, what we'll talk about, not today really, but at future meetings, I want to talk with you more, once we understand what your priorities are more. Then I want to really talk with you about how you want to operate. And there's a few different ways boards can operate to be effective, and it would be great to have all 5 members here when we do that. So maybe later this summer, after we do the forum, we can talk more about how do you want to work together.
I would like that. If you can give us some preliminary discussion now, then we'll follow up.
Absolutely, right, absolutely. All right, good. And so, so this is just a rough schedule for you. We don't have all the dates. Well, actually, I should say I did put dates on this slide, but I want you to know I don't even think Brianna has ever seen these dates. I put them in because I think this may be a typical meeting day for you on a Monday. And so I'm hoping that this flow of a schedule can work for you. But if any of those dates don't look good, we can certainly talk about that.
The only
So,
one that doesn't match me is the community forum, but we talked about that, and I think that's pretty much set in stone now.
yeah, I know.
MRB and Scotland.
Your
that week.
your planning director, Paul, had let me know, and we looked at some other dates and
Okay, you survived without me.
couldn't quite get the dates to
I'll
work.
thank everyone drinking a little scotch in Scotland.
Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, we were talking about, should we push it into July, and, folks felt like
No,
that
I'd
would be
rather
a
not
little,
delay it. I'd
a
rather
little
get
tough,
going.
yeah, yeah. So, I'm gonna actually, is it okay if I stand over there? Will the mic still
You
get
can
me?
use the podium, has a
That might
mic
be
there.
a little easier, because it's hard to, I keep having to turn around to look. All right, good. This is a little easier to see. So we'll have the community forum, and really we want to get feedback on what we're going to work on today, which I want us to write a draft mission and some draft goals. And you don't have to necessarily all agree on the exact wording. I just want to get a flavor for what you're looking for. You could even come up with some options. We're like, well, we could have these kinds of goals or these other kinds of goals, and we want some feedback. But I want some content from you today, and that's what we'll use to create that forum. We're going to share the content, including I want to look at the properties that the trust owns and talk through priorities. And so that's what we'll basically get ready for the forum through the course of our working session today. Then I want to meet with you in hopefully July 10th will work for you all. I want to review what we learned at the forum, and then we want to take it to that next step. And we want to really work on, well, now that we understand what community members who participated in the forum are looking for, how might we change the mission or refine it, and the goals and priorities. And part of this work will also be a vision for priority sites. So I want to talk with you about priorities. I also want to talk with the community at the forum about their priorities for the sites. And then I want to start working on a little bit of a visioning. So if there's one, maybe it's the Marcelli property, but we can talk about that. I don't want to predetermine that for you. But if there's 1 or 2 priority sites you really want to focus on in the next year or 2 years, want to start to generate a vision to some extent with you today. If you have a vision already, you're envisioning something for those sites, but also at the community workshop. And then we want to talk with you about that in July after the workshop. So the July meeting is really a debrief from what we learned, and we'll take it to the next step. Then we go ahead and we will write the first draft of the plan for you once we have some clarity on direction. And we'll give that to you. I always like to have a deadline, so I put it here, Wednesday, August 9th. It's a little bit arbitrary, but I want to give you, at least a full weekend to look at something. So that's typically what, if you say that date's no good, we want more time, just let me know. And then in August, assuming these dates work, we want to review that first draft plan. And some of these will be remote, we're hoping, and some of these will be in person. And then we'll revise that plan, submit to you. And I want you to know, when we submit to you the first draft in early August, it's not actually the full plan, it's the policy pieces. And the background chapter we already wrote, but it's the policy pieces. But we don't get to the fine point of a proposed budget or a one-year action plan yet, because we want to make sure that the policy pieces look good to you first. And then the second draft will have a draft budget We typically do a budget for the full 5 years. It's speculative because, you know, we have to guess if, are you going to be asking the Community Preservation Committee for CPA funds, or maybe there are some other funds. So some of it's guesswork, and you'll want to adjust that budget over time. But we give you what we think it might cost in general to do the things you want to do, and then we try to match you with some funds that are realistic. And then we want to meet with you again in September to review that second draft plan. We'll revise it, and then the final thing we'll do is we in our scope we have a public presentation, and we're proposing that for October. And it was unclear who that presentation is to. I think because we just didn't. I think none of us knew quite yet. It could be a presentation to you, and perhaps you invite the select board or other committee members, other members of the public. You can invite people who came to the public forum. We could do it in the evening instead of your normal daytime. We could do it before the select board instead of the trust. So it's all open. You don't have to decide right now.
Yeah, my suggestion just off the top of my head would be a joint meeting between the board and us. So we handle that, and then that gives us a good start to go for further public meetings.
So it'd be a joint between the select board and the housing trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna add that we might wanna think about including other housing-related organizations in the town.
We might just think about that, because it may be better to start smaller and expand after the initial discussion. Bob, just work through that. They have to be involved. I'm just trying to think of
Yep.
how I get too cumbersome. You know, I'm anxious to look at your discussion about priorities, because my personal feeling is that it's tempting to try to solve world hunger, and I'm not comfortable doing that. I'd like to, but I'm not comfortable doing it. So I would like to be sure we focus in on the Marshline property first. We have a lot of things going on the side, but just, bottom line is, the committee has moved as fast as some think we should. I want to show some action, even if it's not complete. I want to get some things done.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's wonderful. And so let me move through these relatively quickly. This may be a little small for you. So we did hand this out back in December. I think we'll need to send this out again just to make sure everyone has it. But it's basically the first chapter of your plan is a background, and we updated your housing needs. And what we found is that they're pretty much the same as they were when you did your HPP, your housing production plan a few years ago. And so your housing needs and the slideshow that you just got captures them nicely as well. But what we say it a little bit different. We think a little bit more about the types of units in addition to the types of households you're trying to house. And so we have a mixture here, increasing affordable rental options, but also home ownership and starter home options are also important. Increasing options that are accessible, especially as the community is aging, and then reintroducing programs such as rehab program, especially helping out existing low or moderate income households who are living here currently. Now, not all of these are easy to do with housing trust funds. I wasn't going to give you an intro to eligibility today, but I'm happy to answer questions. So I don't have slides about eligibility, but I want you to know that rehab is actually not something a trust can do unless you're at the other end of the rehab, you're creating affordable units. So just doing a rehab program that assists low and moderate income households may be something worthy to do, but it's not something the trust can fund without actually creating units at the other end of it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Just in general, and I'm happy to talk more about eligibility at some point with you.
And when you say creating, that's hitting the shy list.
Yeah, exactly. Like if there was if because of the rehab, there's now a deed restriction or some other type of agreement that then makes that unit that was not on the shy list before eligible for the shy list, then you could say that's creating a new unit, even though it could be an existing house. It was not on the subsidized housing inventory before.
It's
Okay.
a create and preserve at the same time.
Exactly. That's exactly right. All right, good. And then, again, this is small, and I'm happy to send the fuller, it's a summary that we did a number of years ago. I'm happy to send this around. But we did some interviews just as part of our due diligence a couple years ago when we were working on this. And I won't go through all of them. I suspect that, you might agree with most of these. But I'll just say some of the highlights. Some of the interviews talked about the real need for affordable rental units. As well as, talking about some of the types of households that really need units, including the younger families as, really all ages, your workforce, so nothing that you haven't heard. So I'm just going to skip over this so we can get right to. Okay, so let's get into this working session. So the things that we'll be working on with you are a mission. And you might say, well, why do you need a mission? We already know our purpose because it's statutory, and that's to create and preserve affordable, low and moderate income housing. And that's true. But a mission can get you to be even more precise, because that's pretty broad. You can do a lot of things under create and preserve housing for low, moderate income households. And so a mission can be more specialized, help you set those priorities that you were talking about. It could be, and I'm going to give you some examples, but it could be that you really want to focus on getting that shy list to 10%. Maybe that's what you focus your funds on. You don't have to do that. And so there's some decisions to be made when you're creating a mission. Goals are really, what are the priorities and conditions you're aiming for? Are you aiming for a certain number of units? Are you aiming for helping a certain number of households? Sometimes, you create goals that are not measurable, and other times you do. So I want to talk through that. And then we're not quite there yet, but your actions are going to be, okay, now that we know your mission and your goals, what are you going to do each month, each year, in the next 5 years? What are those actions? Are you going to be funding developers that come in and ask you for funds? Are you going to be using the properties that you have? Maybe you pick one as a high priority for the next couple years and you put out a request for proposals, which you're already working on. So those are examples of specific actions, but first we want to get those priorities right before we decide that. And then somewhere down the line, we'll talk about your capacity. Do you have enough capacity? Do you have enough staffing? Do you have enough people power, et cetera? And where does your funding come from? Do you have enough funds? Yeah.
Jen, going back up to mission, how would you tie vision and mission together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was not going to write a vision for you, but I can if you'd like.
My vision,
Mm-hmm.
just as a newbie here, is being able to stand back and have a sign say, Harwich, an affordable home. An
I love
affordable
that.
community.
I love that. And so the first exercise we're going to do is to ask you to write your headline for, hopefully, if you still have a newspaper in 5 years, what that headline would be. And so the mission, I am going to answer your question. So the mission is a little different from a vision, but they're related. The vision is really a picture of what success will look like. And it's usually a little bit more artistic sounding, and it's things like that. It's like
It's aspirational.
It's aspirational. And I'm happy to write a vision for you as well. A mission is a little bit more nuts and bolts. Like our mission is to advocate for housing and educate our community, is to create units that are eligible for the subsidized housing inventory so that we can meet our state's 10% housing goal. That's a mission is not quite as it is aspirational way, but it doesn't paint a picture. It's a little more nuts and bolts. Okay, and I'm going to give you some examples of these as well. So, so your mission, your statutory purpose doesn't change, but your mission could change over time. Let's just go with the mission of, and I'm not saying you have to use this mission, but let's just go with you want to get to 10% on the shy. Well, once you get to 10%, then your mission will change because you've accomplished that. Your mission doesn't have to change, but I just want you to know that it can be something that changes over time. All right, so we already really talked about this. This is 2 examples of missions that are similar, but they're, for different communities. So Natick decided on a mission to The first bullet is to increase the availability of affordable housing through production and preservation, and they have a footnote saying specifically how many units they need and that kind of thing. And provide resources, facilitate community dialogue, and advocate for housing as a human right. They talked a lot about that second one, and that's not the primary purpose of a trust, but it's something that a trust certainly can add to its mission if you feel like advocacy and providing information and education is something that you can contribute to the town. Often that's a consideration if there's a gap there, if the community doesn't already have an organization or another entity that's fulfilling that role. Second one is Gloucester. So Gloucester says their mission is to increase and preserve affordable housing in the city. And in doing so, it is also the policy of the city and the Affordable Housing Trust to protect, preserve, and enhance the economic and social diversity of the city, to provide affordable rental and homeownership options for people of all ages and income levels, and to accommodate the changing needs of families and individuals. So they decided to get much more specific in terms of the types of households, and they also wanted to talk about economic and social diversity. So these are similar in some ways. And so I just wanted to give you just a few examples. There's lots of different ways you can go with a mission.
I have a very distinct preference for bullets as opposed to verbiage.
Yeah, no, I agree, me too.
Yeah, and that's a very well, nice way to organize, so you can very easily see the different components. So, so what I want to do is I want to go through the goals and what I mean by that, and give you some examples, and then I want to go back and do this activity with you. So I talked about goals a little bit by saying that they can be measurable. Sometimes communities want a goal of a specific number of units or a specific number of households that they want to serve. You don't have to have a measurable goal. A lot of communities like that, and I like to at least explore that with you. Communities, I guess the negative piece about having a goal is some communities are afraid, well, what if we don't meet it? Won't that make us look bad if we say our goal is to create 10 units of housing or 20 units or 50 or whatever it is, and we don't meet it? Other communities really like it because it gives them something specific to strive for. So they know, if we do X project over Y project, we'll make more progress toward that measurable goal. And that helps you to make some decisions about what you spend your money on. So go either way, but I want to throw that out there. So here's some examples. You can have both funding priorities, which is what we're going to really work on today, but you can also have operational priorities. And so I just gave them both to you so you can see some of the differences in what I'm talking about. So funding priorities, as an example, prioritize trust funding to help create, at least in this community, this was Natick, at least 50 affordable housing units between the time frame of their action plan. Second one, provide trust funding to assist households with short-term housing assistance. They wanted to do a rental assistance program, which is eligible if you have CPA funds, because that's one of the CPA purposes that you can do under the term support. You can also do down payment assistance, and so they have some examples of what they want to do. And then they also wanted to have a goal of monitoring and preserving the stock because they had some expiring uses, or they also had some condos, I believe, that sometimes it's a little hard to find an eligible buyer for, so they wanted to stay on top of that. So those are just some examples of goals, and you can see how they're related to their mission, but they're not exactly the same. Yes?
Question, where would you, or how would you insert in the goals list the goal of increasing the community's trust in the trust?
Yeah, you could absolutely put that in. It's probably not under funding priorities.
It's not very
So,
measurable.
yeah, we would probably do that under, we could create a new, there's nothing that says we can't have more than these two categories. So we could create a education and advocacy category, or a community relations category. We could call it really whatever you want. Yeah, but that's probably how I would do that.
Okay.
And in this community, you see, they really wanted to focus on operational. They have a number of operational goals. You may or may not need that many goals, or maybe, when we get there, we'll talk about that. All right. So, and then we're going to do that exercise. So why don't we go back and you know, sometimes, you know, folks want a few minutes to think about it. Others may be like, "Ah, I already know what I want to say." So I'll leave it to you all to tell me if you want a few minutes to think about this. Some trusts also, you know, we often don't have members of the public here watching. If you'd like for them to also share their ideas, very open to that. Up to you. Up to you.
Well, for me personally, I like to make some comments as we go along, but I would need to take them home and think about it some more and give some feedback.
Sure, that's
I'm
fine.
oftentimes guilty of talking without thinking. I sort of,
I'm gonna just take a seat so I can take notes.
okay. Other opinion? I'd like to have it both ways, I guess. I like to have it both ways. I'd like to have some initial comments and have a chance to review these and bring comments back to you or Brienne, how you work it out to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you could just email me.
Yeah, I'll throw some
Yeah.
stuff out there. I mean, something we've been working on recently is, and been talking a lot about, is the RFP for the Marceline property. And, you know, that could be part of the mission statement. That's gonna be our first objective. And then also, the shy list. I think everything we do should be focused towards that goal of 10%. We're at 5.46%. I think it's something we should attack. The presentation we had earlier is amazing. They're gonna help us get there, but let's double that, so
Yeah.
we can do that.
I-
So we can work in tandem with them as well as they pursue, you know, their work.
Yeah.
So I thought those two items, but I want to stay focused on the shy list. I recently was in a community engagement that the Cape Cod Commission's putting on, and I mentioned staying on, you know, 80% or less, and they said, don't get just set on that number. But when you read our declaration, trust, all the docs, it really focuses on, when you go to the comprehensive permit process, it goes to HUD, and if you go down that rabbit hole of hours of reading, it always comes back to 80% or less to hit that list. So I think it's something as a mission we should be. And then after seeing the numbers today, 64,000 for one person, it was 60,000 last year on the new HUD. That's who we're gonna be helping. And I think, you know, that's at 80% AMI. So I think there's a lot of good we can do in those parameters and stay focused on it. There's been talk about going above that or using the word workforce above 80%. To me, I think workforce is everybody. Everyone's putting, you know, their work in. So for me, I think for us to focus at first, 80% or less is best. And then when the goal changes after the 5-year plan or a 3-year plan, then we can really attack something different.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. I probably have a bit of a difference of opinion than you on, you talked about it. Maybe the key, though, we can work together is do that at first, because in some ways I'm more interested in housing in general than I am just
Correct.
meeting the 10%, which I see sometimes as a bit of an artificial goal. So maybe we can come to agreement on you and I, if we say maybe that's the first objective, but we always have in sight housing
Right, but
in
the state,
general.
and maybe Jen, maybe you can talk to this, the state statute, when they allowed the towns to create trusts, there's parameters that you have to fall into.
Right.
We spoke about this briefly. And then you have our trust docs, and they're really formed from that.
Right.
So it always falls to me, when I go down the rabbit hole of conversation, and we've had this before, it really goes to the 80% and how we can use
Well,
CPA funds.
Maybe we have some wiggle
Yeah.
room and have one priority and then we can move on.
Yeah, I think, I agree with that. I mean, we talked about rental assistance before. I think
Yeah.
that's very interesting. I'd like to know how we could do that. We did have someone present that to us one time, but they wanted 3 years of funding. I don't think we had the money at the time, so we were willing to give 1 year, but we had a 3-year program. It was either 3 years or nothing. So that would be nice to visit. There's also preserving some housing that's out there right now. There's 2 properties that are coming up that we can step in and maybe preserve those. So I know I said a lot there, but mission statement for me would be shy list, the RFP, and preserving any units that are expiring off the shy list.
Mary?
Just, Mary Anderson, just to back up what Brian's talking about, I'm sorry, just called you the wrong name.
It's okay.
The,
You can call
the
it whatever.
importance, I think, of focusing on 80% and less is it also helps us with an unfriendly 40B. I believe the state is less apt to force it on us if we've made that. So I'm with Brian, let's get that first. And
Correct.
if we can do that in 5 years, I'd be pretty happy.
We're closer than you think. I mean, I've heard, in past Board of Selectmen meetings, we were 20 years behind. I know we might have stumbled in the last 4 years, but we have done, I think, a lot up to this point. I think 5 years from now, we're not gonna be 20 years behind anymore. It's gonna be a different story.
I would love to see us create a partnership between housing and conservation. And too oftentimes, it's viewed as an either-or situation. And I'm a believer that it really can be both. So I'd like to see that included in our mission.
Agreed. Yep, perfect.
I like that. That's good.
So this is helpful. And I think that your suggestion of giving it some thought, you can always email me again, as long as you're not copying everyone. You can email Brianna or me
Right, okay.
and give me a few more, if you have more thoughts after this. And then I think what I'd like,
Just one other, want to think about that.
Oh,
I
of
won't
course.
interrupt you again, but I'd like us to take actionable measures. Because oftentimes it's easy to talk about generalities, but when we talk about priorities, let's be sure it's things we know we can move on.
If I can add one more thing. So the previous presentation, Pine Oaks 4, if you take a look at where they're heading, we don't even really have to talk percentages. It's, low to moderate, and when they find their way through all the problems, whether it's, all the vouchers, LIHTC, whatever program they're gonna use, most of their money, they're gonna come in that 50, 60, 80%. There's more funding, I believe, in the 60. So you'll see developers who come to our RFP that we put out for Marsline, they're gonna come and they're gonna hit those numbers anyway. So we really don't need to talk about percentages. It's going to happen. They're gonna present to us.
And Jen, that's a perfect discussion. That was kind of what I was alluding to when I asked the previous group, is I think we all want an RFP that gives the developer as much creativity as possible to meet to do what they can, rather than try to dictate up front and be too
Right.
specific.
Yeah, so for example, when Pine Oaks 4 does phase 3, they can tackle that home ownership, and there's
Yeah.
certain things like it's a 3% down payment, 30 years, and there's a certain percent of the monthly income at the 80% AMI. So when they get to phase 3, they're probably gonna go back to that and get funding for that, so it's all available.
Yep.
okay, this is helpful. And so, I wonder if you, and I'm gonna ask you about the goals in just a moment, but I wonder if you wanna think about this, if you have any other thoughts, would another week be okay? Is that fair, or
I would like to give us possibly 2 weeks,
2 weeks? Yep,
because we have 2 members that will be,
Yeah, it'd be nice to have.
will
Good
be,
point.
and we can send it out to them, we'll know. We have one already, we'll send out immediately, and we have whoever the select put on there, select board, and have them comment on it too. So
that sounds
I
great.
still wanna spend some time with the 2 new members and get them up to date.
Yeah.
On the properties we have. I'm gonna make a little binder for them, just basic information that
Great,
we've been working on the last 4 years, so they can have it.
that's
So
wonderful.
I'll get that together for the next 2.
And then I saw that your next meeting isn't until June 20th, which is a little tight onto the forum for us to figure out what the content is. So I'm actually wondering, would it make any sense to have a earlier June meeting? I could just come in
I'm
remote.
fine with that. We could
Yeah.
move that up a week earlier, for instance, if that works.
So it's,
Yeah, what,
June is fine.
Yeah, if I could
Yeah.
just come in remote, then I can take whatever comments you gave me over the next 2 weeks, and then we can talk with, hopefully, I don't know if both new members will be here by then, but that would be good if they
Right,
could
but
be.
I'm sure they will be.
So you want us
Brianna, is
to
that okay?
send an idea, a vision, sorry, mission and goals.
Yeah, and let's talk about the goals briefly
Well,
now,
Before
but
we
then.
leave that, just
oh,
make sure we're okay on the date.
Yeah,
We
no,
have
if, Jen, if you just want to send me a few dates that you have available,
Yes.
I'll check with them and then we can schedule that.
Perfect,
Because I'm fine, I think we're, three of us are fine moving up. Like, I don't.
great.
Kathy, please.
Kathy Green. I just wanted to address the rental subsidy thing, in that the Community Preservation Act has, through Town of Harwich, has funded several years, times now, rental subsidy program. It's administered by the Housing Authority, and it's usually like a 2 to 3 year program. I think we've given between $200,000 and $300,000 depending on the year. And they provide, I think up to $300 a month is the max right now per household, and they have X number of households. The last one that we funded, which is I think 2 years in now, has not been that successful in that they have not had many families that have met certain criteria. And so they've really maybe only helped out like 7 families on a regular basis for the last couple of years. Some of it had to do with COVID because there was a lot of other programs that were providing funding during that time period. And I think they were hoping as we came out of COVID that would change a little bit. And we're waiting for a report from the person who administers the funds through Housing Authority to come to our committee meeting to give us an update. So I just wanted to let you know that is a program that's out there, and we've been funding it for several years, many years now.
Thank you, Kathy, because I was thinking about some of that in our previous discussion, because we've gotten kind of a catch-22 here.
Yeah.
We get money for rentals, but then there's not enough property in Harwich to rent. So somehow we need to build
Right.
we need to build the property so it can be rented. I don't know how. So we have some issues in front of us.
Yeah. All right, yes.
Can we get a goal statement, this discussion goals page emailed as a prompt?
Yeah, in fact, do you want me to just send you this whole PowerPoint?
Send us the whole
I actually
packet.
copied you.
Good.
Yeah, I can send it to
So
them.
you can send it to them.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then you'll have all of these.
And let's not forget vision.
And then would you like to talk briefly about goals right now, or just wait till we see each other again, or you can email me?
Why don't we wait till we see you again, we can go through these goals.
Yeah, that sounds
I think we
good.
can give us some thought, and we can, and again, just because of open meeting laws and stuff, let's not communicate ourselves, we'll send the goals to, how would you rather, Brianna? Do you send it to you, Jen, or how
You
you
can just
guys
forward to
working
me if
together?
you want.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I can do that.
You'll be our central point, we'll send all this stuff to you,
Yep,
Brianna, and you'll work
That
with
works
Jen.
with me. Yep.
All right, good. All right, and then in terms of the development sites, we have to fix our map, because I realized the one that we gave you in that first chapter that we sent back in December, for some reason, it didn't include your biggest property, the Marcelli property, so.
Oh, my God.
I know, I added it, I added it in this slide, because I realized the omission, but, so we'll fix that for you. But essentially, these are the Properties that we understand you have ownership of, and again, if we've missed anything else, let us know.
Number 2,
Yeah,
Main Street Arbor House, you can eliminate that. That was on the 2019 ask at town meeting, and we pulled it at the last minute. So
okay,
you can remove that one.
all right. The rest of them look all
Mhm.
right? Okay, great.
Yeah, and then Pleasant Lake Ave, Queen Anne, it's not 13.4, you're including the one that's in eminent domain, it's really like 11, I got it here, I could send it to you, 11.89 total acres. It's 3 parcels, but within those parcels is other parcels, so it's a little confusing, but
Okay,
I believe that to be correct, so I think
Okay.
you're including the extra parcel.
great. And then if, when you get a chance, I'll send this corrected version of the map around. But if you could just make sure, if you're familiar with these properties, that we caught the right parcels
Yep,
and didn't catch anything wrong.
I'll send you my cheat sheet of,
Perfect,
I'll get a sheet that shows the properties, milestones to date,
great.
and properties that we have talked about, like the Arbor House, 70 Willow, Depot Street, extra parcels is 2, J4, J6.
Right.
Earl Road has been mentioned a couple of times. I've just been keeping track of those properties.
Great.
So,
Okay, and then if I have questions, can I reach out directly to you,
Yeah,
Brendan?
absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, he's the
good.
keeper of all our information.
Yeah, it seems like
He's
you've
the
got the-
longest member, so yeah.
Great. All right, good, because we want to make sure to get that right. We'll probably show a version of this map at the,
Yeah, that's
at
awesome.
the,
That's great.
all right, so I just zoomed in because we had one of the surveys, so I don't know if this is we had like three
That is
different.
correct.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
Okay, good. So, my question for you, and we can do this again at, oh, can't go backwards, I'm pointing at the screen, just like she told me not to. So when we meet with you in early June, what I really want to talk through are these properties and what you envision as first. I think I know the first priority, but I'd really like to have a thoughtful and public discussion about that in preparation for the forum, so that when we're presenting this at the forum, I'm on the same page with what you're thinking.
Yeah.
So we can do that in early June, and then so the forum. The main thing, and I think we're almost done, because I know we've taken a lot of time, but the main thing I'd like to decide today, if we can, is which style of a forum would you like us to run? So we have the date, we have the place. I looked at the community center space, and it's wonderful for both formats. The two formats we can do is small group breakouts, where people come in and they hear our presentation, and then we walk them through discussion exercises in small groups, groups of 5 or 6 people, depending on how many people show up. We'll have tables scattered around. Maybe we'll print out some maps, or, we'll talk about the activities more precisely in June when we meet with you, but that's one style. The other style is more the open house style, where we still open with a presentation. We do the same presentation essentially to get people oriented to who the trust is, what you can fund, what some of the choices are. And then we have stations around the room with different exercises. People can just walk around and put Post-it notes on what they think. They can look at the maps and talk about their vision for different sites, or if you want to hone in onto one site or 2 sites, we can talk about those kinds of details. But the idea is that they hear a presentation and then they just kind of circulate, and they can stay as long or as short. They can stay 10 minutes if they need to go do something else that evening. The breakout group is a more intense discussion with folks. So there's benefits, there's,
So you're putting other residents with
Yeah.
other residents,
Yeah.
and they're gonna
they'll
talk.
talk to each other, yeah. And there's pros and, it's pros and cons to both ways.
Yeah, I've done that
yeah.
before
Yeah.
in some leadership classes I've taken, and, it seems pretty productive when you put all these ideas in one little group, and then one comes out of it. I think it's interesting. So,
That's been my experience, but I wanted to ask your question, which, the focus groups, because then there's, but is your experience, that's better to get most discussion going?
You can get a deeper discussion in the breakout groups. The open house is nice if you don't think people will come and stay 2 hours. If they want to come, hear the presentation, and do some quick things around the room and leave. Some communities want, feel their population will be more inclined to come and not stay very long. But you may not feel that way, especially if you've had success with the breakout groups before.
yeah.
I like the breakout. Bob, you're,
Yeah, I've got a curiosity about whether or not we can't do both. I can imagine a large room with pictures of each property and inviting people to go to those pictures and leave notes as to what should happen with this particular piece of property. And then to go from that into breakout groups, to really have these more focused, intimate conversations.
We could do that, and then
Yeah.
the people who want to leave can leave.
That's
Yeah,
right.
And as trust members, we can walk around and help the groups.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've been a part of that. I think it's a great idea.
okay?
All right, I like that. So we can have stations around the room. I'll do an opening presentation to get everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
We can have them do their activities around the room, and then for anyone who, we'll encourage people to stay. But if anyone needs to leave, that's a good time to leave after they do that. Share their thoughts, and then sit in these breakout groups. And and I know, Larry, you won't be there, but we'll have, you'll both be there,
Yes.
Brendan and
Yeah.
Bob? Okay, good. And then hopefully the 2 members
Hopefully the new ones will be there.
can come as well,
Yeah.
and Brianna will be there, and Paul can't come, I believe, right? I'll have another member of my team, her name is Alana, so we'll have, the 2 of us will also be wandering around. helping people if they get stuck on
Do you
anything.
need any of us to present anything? Do you need?
I'm not sure yet. Let me think about what we need to present. After we go through June, I think our early meeting our early June meeting, I think I'll have a better idea of the content. And then why don't we talk about who's doing which pieces and if I should do the whole thing or not.
Okay.
And I don't think it's too early to start thinking about follow-up meetings as well. We need, for instance, to keep CPC involved in some discussion of what we're going forward. Whether or not we ask for funding, we already have money from them, so we need to have them as discussion group, and I don't know who else we need. Well, the other housing groups, obviously. But I'd like to look at the schedule of other forums as well.
That's a very interesting point because I hadn't thought of this before, but when we get to, I'm just going back to that schedule. When we get to the point when we're talking about the budget with you, hopefully some funding will come from the Community Preservation Act. That may be a good time to really encourage CPC members.
Not only that, we just need to keep them involved in the discussion, because they've already provided funding, so we want to be sure that
Right.
they
Yeah,
know
we're supposed to meet once a year with the budget, but I don't see why we can't do more.
we need to do more than that.
I mean, I don't expect Kathy to come to every meeting, but.
Oh, I do.
It's greatly appreciated.
You've
I
been
know
here-
she reports
you've been
back
here
in a
once,
positive way, but.
I'm gonna call her if she doesn't come.
No, but I wouldn't mind getting in front of CPC just to, just give a
We
quick
need that
bullet point.
We need that communication be constant.
Yeah.
When is the CPA application due? Is it a specific?
Early-
October?
Not that you're thinking about that.
All right.
All right. So that's actually, that will actually fit pretty well, just coincidentally, because I didn't know that when I created this. But that will fit pretty well because you'll have the second draft with your budget already in the September meeting. If you want to go forward and put in an application to CPC to consider in October, you won't have your final plan, but it'll be close enough
Yep.
that you'll know what you probably want to ask for. Yeah. All right, good. Well, that's everything I had, and then we'll coordinate on a June date.
Well, that's great.
That's
Thank you
awesome.
very much.
Thank you.
And yeah, if you can send the slides to us, and we will
Absolutely.
promise, right? I promise to the Royal House that we'll all respond to the goals and
Good.
missions and vision and stuff.
One last question?
Yes.
So our next old business is going to be discussing the Marceline property
Mm.
in RFP. You feel comfortable with us still moving forward in that direction?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Nothing we need to add, we could just, yeah,
I think so.
we'll just give you an
Can
update
you
of,
just tell me, what is the timing of your hoped-for release of the RFP? Would it be before or after the forum?
Before, I'm hoping we'll get it
No,
out before.
well, I
Don't
think
you?
yeah, well,
That's a month.
I mean,
That's a
it's a
month?
70-page document, so I don't think it's, unless Brianna wants.
Okay, I keep pushing on this.
Yeah, no, I think,
We'll
With,
come-
with
we'll
kids
come
and
back
a
with
life,
it.
I don't know if it can happen that fast,
mean,
Larry.
I actually think you'll get some guidance from the community in the
it's
forum.
good to throw that in
Yeah.
there, just because,
Yeah.
and with new members, because I feel like I have a lot in my head that I
Okay,
can share, but.
I'll give up to the rest of the people smarter than I am, but.
Well,
I'm
I'm
anxious to
I'm
move it.
happy to observe your conversation, and I'll stick around for this, so.
Okay, good.
Kathy has a comment.
Kathy?
Yeah.
Oh, you're bringing support too, huh?
I didn't mean to come up to the mic so much today, but I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I did watch it online. And I noticed that you had a discussion with Elaine about J3, J4.
J4, J6.
Well,
I
the
understand.
discussion was about J3 and then J4, J6.
Right.
Yes, and you were looking for some history. So I've been on the Real Estate and Open Space Committee since 2011. So I have all the minutes, et cetera, since then. So I kind of took a deep dive to see if I could find some information for you. And in 2012, an affordable housing advocate came before Rios and wanted to put 8 units, a total of 24 bedrooms, on 6 acres, so J1, J2, right at the top there. And at the time, Rios was opposed to it, basically because it was a zone of contribution to the town, 2 certified vernal pools, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, it didn't kind of come back to anybody's attention until 2019, right before town meeting, when
You put it on.
the warrant article came up. And that February and March and April, there were many discussions about the warrant article 61 and the pieces that were mentioned, et cetera. And specifically map 63 with J1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. And mostly J4 and J6 were eliminated because they're a wildlife connector and because they're 90% priority habitat. And that's why they were taken off the list.
Right, and that's great, thank you for that.
So I just wanted to let you know that that was sort of like, that's all we have for the history of that, but that was the reasoning. And in addition, our understanding when the J3 parcel was amended on town floor was that the total aggregate of J3 could be used.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, Mr. Donovan, I think, made that
Yes.
amendment.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and to Bob's point about working with conservation, before I answer, I mean, that could be something we could work with if we had a property and stuff like that, so. I mean,
Yeah.
what's your, can I ask, like, could you bring it back to your board and talk about whether or not we can acquire that or not, or do you think you're?
Well, it's owned by the Board of Selectmen.
Right,
I mean, it's under the care and custody of the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
It's not up to us. It's just,
But you give recommendations to the board of selectmen.
right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the committee would change their mind
Mm-hmm.
in terms of supporting that or not.
It just makes the land more valuable for a potential developer, even though cannot work on it. So we could put restrictions on an RFP that you have to be north, 100 feet north of the
Yeah,
vertical
it
pool.
wasn't, it
So,
was strongly advised that we put the amendment in because it wasn't felt that it would be enforced otherwise.
Yeah, that's interesting.
but hold on, but the amendment was only for parcel 1 north of the Verna Pool.
The amendment was for J3,
Yeah, for J3.
so 100 feet north of the most northern vernal pool.
Correct, but we're
Right.
talking about the other 2 parcels. Is that what you were?
There wasn't anything on those, you mean, are you talking J4 and J6?
Yeah.
Those were meant to be protected
Same, yeah.
forever.
Right, exactly.
So I'm not really sure,
It'd be the same difference, yeah, the line still holds, so, yeah. I think we're just looking, we had conversation about just taking the parcels,
Yeah.
so,
And, yeah. And obviously, that was part of my question when we had the Greg and Bob and gang here about, sometimes people will move away probably because of vernal pools, but they still, the acreage in total helps
right,
through zoning, so I don't want to throw that out without,
Right.
because of that reason, so.
I don't, in terms of J4 and J6.
I'm sorry, that's what you were commenting on.
Yeah,
Like-
I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of why they weren't included initially.
Yeah, so it's just the wildlife. No,
Yeah.
good, that's good to know, yeah. And we would, try to keep it that way, I'm sure,
Yeah.
but.
Hi, Elaine,
Mr. Chair.
again.
Thank you. Elaine Shovelin. Just a suggestion, when you're talking about your forum and discussing the different properties and putting them up, if you've kind of already decided that you're probably going to sell a couple of those properties, don't include them. Because the fewer things people have to focus on and talk about that night, the better. I would not include them if you already know that you're going to sell them.
Interesting.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're not there yet, Elaine, but we'll keep that. Thank you, Heath. No other comments? Next on the agenda is an RFP, it was Marceline property. Been waiting a long time, but Brianna, I'll throw this over to you, because I know you've been working on this to some extent.
Oh, me. I said Brendan, I'm sorry.
Oh, Brianna, I'm sorry.
No, so Paul and I have been discussing it a bit. I have reached out to different towns to kind of get examples of similar RFPs. Jen sent me one or a few as well, and then I sent them to you guys. So I believe as far as if I talk to Joe as the procurement officer, Paul and I could get started on this for you guys.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great, yeah.
Yep, but I think there's some discussions that you need to have with what you would want written into the RFP specifically.
And Paul did send us a list of questions
Yep, there's a memo, it should be in the packet.
Yep.
He has,
It is.
and we can give some general guidance, I think, right now, and then
Sure.
possibly follow up,
That would be great.
talked about it. And then at the end, I will, I think, move ahead with a motion to, move going forward. I'll start. Number one is trust wants to sell the property or enter into a long-term lease property. I leave that, everything's always open for discussion, but my strong direction is to a long-term lease of the property right now. I would hate to, we have a very, I'm talking Marceline, all, this is the whole discussion on Marceline. We have a great capital asset that we spent money on, and it's not unusual for towns to use that asset to then give to developers for an RF, to develop that. So I would like to focus, my personal feeling is to focus on that, and not as the RFP, and if I would personally look at selling if we have no other option, if there's no taker for a long-term lease, but I'll open that to others as well.
The long-term lease, the possibility exists for that piece of property, and Brendan and I walked that piece of property on Friday. It seems to me like a perfect opportunity to look at a conservation and developer union.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see some RFPs from around here that have done that. My understanding is that land trusts are becoming more actively involved in the affordable housing world, so.
And Brenda and I talked with Brianna, a short discussion, agenda discussion about inviting Michael Locke in our next meeting
Yes.
to further that discussion. I think all of us have had some initial discussion with Mike about how can we better work together
Yep.
on that. So I think we'll pursue that.
Good.
That point.
Good.
And so that's that. But
So if we have basically 12 acres, and that's not including the eminent domain potential too, what's the normal capacity for a property of that size? I mean, Paul's question is setting a range for the number of housing units.
That may be a question for Jen she can help us with. I don't know if you have to have a minimum or maximum number in the RFP. I would tend not to put a number to any of it until a developer comes forward, because like I said, it goes to the program, the dollars, very similar to what Pine Oaks 4 did. So, but Jen?
Yeah, I mean, you could go a number of ways with this. Some communities want to say we don't want to see more than X units because of some factors that they have awareness of. Maybe they think the neighbors will only have a tolerance for a certain amount. Really, what will dictate capacity is probably going to be the wastewater and what the land can hold. And so that will be a kind of a natural dictation of your capacity. But then you can put in things, whether you choose to say a specific unit count or not as a maximum. If you don't do that, or even if you do, either way, you could put in the housing type you're looking for, and that will also end up in a backwards, kind of a backwards calculation of if you're looking for townhouses, for example, you're not going to get as much density as if you're looking for kind of that lodge style that was just as part of the other one. And so housing type, if you want to specify what you're looking for or what you would be open to, that's something else. If you're looking for more of a conservation subdivision, then that might be something altogether different, because then you're looking for a certain amount of open space as well. And you may even want to specify, we think that this piece of the property or that piece would be most advantageous as conservation land because of, could be habitat, could be connections, could be buffer to neighbors, could be lots of different reasons. You may want to specify that if you already know which areas you'd like to see as conservation. You may not know that, but just to give you a sense of, that will also help to dictate the ultimate density, by backing out, if you're taking out a certain number of acres for conservation. So that's my, no, I'm not answering your question specifically, but does that give you a little guidance?
That's helpful.
Because, thank you for that, Jan and Bob, I'm trying to make it as open as possible, as I mentioned, for creativity. I wonder if we could use more general terms, meet wastewater demands and is environmental or conservation friendly. And let the developers come back with what their suggestions are to that.
I mean, some of the key points from the previous presentation, the community building, is that something that's important to us, the local preference. Two means of egress. This property has 3 potential egress points. So the traffic study, that would be interesting too, but, passive or not, the construction form. So there's elements that we could throw in there depending on what we want, but it'd be nice to know what hurts an RFP. So what scares off developers? Not saying conservation would, but is that or maybe we already have a parcel in mind, that little sliver, that might just be hanging out there, not, S1, it may not be doing anything.
Right.
So, something to think about.
Yeah, I think if we can, put those general terms in, let people come back, that's what I would like, because in some ways it'd be the experts, but yeah, passive, we all decide we like that.
Yeah, it seems like Mass Save is really pushing
We don't have a
all
choice,
electric.
we probably don't have a choice on that this day and
Probably
age.
won't, yeah. I mean, the rebates on Mass Save with going all electric is there, so.
Well, the other thing that's going on is that Mass Save and Eversource and all the power folks are looking at these battery storage capacity units that are spot located all around the community. And I don't know how we would include that kind of a thing into an RFP.
Maybe
but
it's too specific, but maybe just something broader.
Right, I think that's too specific. I think if we use passive, that's general enough to do it. I also wonder, based on, someone brought, Bob, you did on the previous discussion, access to public transportation. That may be something that we want built into this as well, because this site's always been considered to be ideal for that. We're on just off Route
Well,
6,
it's across the street
from the bus stop,
Yeah.
basically.
That's right.
And so that may be something we build in, be sure there's, an area for public transportation to make it feasible. I think some general things like that, and I trust there's some very good developers around that could walk that property and come up with some great suggestions.
The level of affordability, and I'm looking at Paul's memo, we don't want to go over 80%. I mean, isn't that who we are?
I would think not, yeah, I think we want to hit the shy list, and it goes back to our mission statement, so I think that's important.
Yeah, I've argued that, but I'm agreeing with you guys on this now, because we'll phase one, but
Well,
yeah,
the
so that simplifies though, just 80% or less. We don't have to be specific,
Well,
let them
if you
work
listen-
it out.
Yeah, and I'll keep on going back to Pine Oaks, the problem over 80% is there's no funding, so it's a challenge.
No, you've won that argument.
Yeah.
That's, don't beat me up with it, Brendan. You've already won it. But I think that, and then a term like, we want mixed units in terms of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms and see what best fits. I don't think we need to, I also would be against trying to design that up front. Give them a chance to look at it, just to say we need it.
In terms of capacity, there's something in my head that's rattling around saying 80% of maximum. The maximum capacity would be defined by wastewater issues and health department issues, I think.
There's really no getting around that, so conservation, vernal pools.
And
environment.
wastewater, those have to be.
But zoning, can we break the 30-foot rule in a residential? That's something we can discuss. Once you get to 3 stories, you're breaking that.
Yeah.
So,
And the story is you can, but not easily.
yeah, so the lodge building,
But if we're coming at this, asking the developer to come in as a 40B,
yes.
then that limit is more in play, isn't that right?
When you say that.
The height limit?
It can be. depends on how, depending on what we want for the property.
So would we want to include in the RFP, a proposal that would satisfy a 40B? Do we want to put that in there?
And what would be the purpose of that again? I mean, the 40B pushes it to ZBA, and we get like to the height. We have the 30-foot, as Brendan, they can, if you can justify it, you can get a waiver for that. Whether we want to do that or not, I don't know. I'm not sure we need to build that into the RFP.
Just throwing questions out
Yeah,
there.
like I said, developers are gonna come in with their idea of what they need to make their numbers work
Mhm.
if we're gonna deed restrict it for 20, 25, 30 years. So they're gonna come up with a number that works, because, they're developers, they're gonna make some money, so.
Yep. Okay.
And one of the points that Paul raises that intrigues me, reviewing it again, is amenities for children. I think that if we're talking a reasonable number of units, which we are, I think that type of would be nice to be built in as well.
Yeah, so the open space,
The open space, room for
community center, so on, yeah.
playground, whatever,
Mhm.
hiking. Yeah, exactly, Brendan, thank you.
Can I ask Jen a question? Jen, when it comes to 40B, how much can they push the zoning? Like, they can't just steamroll over all the rules, like how?
Well,
how
they
can
would
they-
ask for waivers based on what they feel would make their project feasible.
Right.
So they could ask for height waivers, setbacks, density requirements, yeah. But because you own the property, you're in a much different position than a typical 40B. When a private entity or even a private nonprofit, the ZBA has, only a certain amount that it can say no to. But because you're the property owner, you can shape this in a way, obviously you need something that's going to be feasible. So you don't want to shape it in such a way that you're not going to get any viable proposals. But you have more authority because you're the property owner to shape it in terms of, you could say what type of architectural style you like or what height limits you would want to see adhered to. Because as the property owner, you have a lot more authority than even the ZBA does.
That's why the form's important. You're gonna hear all
Yeah.
of that, what's important for height
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's important to note too that if we put out an RFP that's somewhat general, for instance, we can reject proposals. That's completely up to us. So we get one back and we don't like the height, and we don't like the architecture, it's within our power to reject it. And so we still are in charge.
And what I've seen recently, a lot of RFPs and Veterans Outreach is doing, they just answered an RFP in the vineyard. And it seems like the architects, when they get involved, they're very sensitive to, they know how to design buildings. They just don't go right to the setbacks. They're coming in even, they're given an extra 50 feet here. So they're very sensitive to all of the issues that might come up in opposition.
Yeah.
So I think the architects, they're really on your side, so it's good that they know how to design stuff.
May I offer one thought?
Of
I
course.
know you have a bunch of examples you're looking for, and I think we
Right.
gave you at least one, but what I do like to have in RFPs or as a suggestion is some scoring criteria, so that if you are going to reject anything, it's very clear in terms of your decision-making process, so that it doesn't seem arbitrary.
And that's been a point that Joel's told us several times.
Good.
So we'll need to do something like that. But I understand the scoring requirement. I just don't want to lock ourselves down up front and build those in too much. I like it a bit general, and we can look at some scoring that then so we can justify it. I agree.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mary?
Back from the cheap seats. Should we request that there be an on-site property manager? My understanding is the complexes that have been most successful and maintained very well have an on-site manager.
Yeah, I
So
like
just
that.
throw that
That's
out.
interesting. I know most developers will have a management company, but
Like-
the on-site, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
I could check with a couple,
Check,
the two in Yarmouth and what they did,
great, thanks.
the gardens and the commons.
Right.
Because we do need to cover that with us. I
don't
guess
know-
your
I don't
question
know-
is
I don't know if
on-site.
they have yeah, I'll check into that.
I believe Yarmouth Gardens has an on-site property manager. They bounce back between a Hyannis location and Yarmouth.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, you guys are gonna check on that and
Yeah.
get some more
Mhm.
feedback. Thank you, Mary. Brianna, is that enough to get going?
It's enough to start us, I suppose, and then any questions that I have, I'll just refer to you all.
If you could circulate to us independently, and of course, we can't share again, I'm still worried about my first love in life, open meeting laws. And we'll get back individually to, Jen, would you be willing to look at these too?
Absolutely.
Okay, if you could work with, get your input into that as well, that would be great, Jen. Any more discussion? Kathy, you look like you want to say something.
I gotta say one more.
Do I need to let you do it?
So you know how the Community Development Partnership runs a lot of those housing workshops.
Yeah.
I happened to watch one a couple months ago, which was really about how affordable housing shouldn't be at odds with conservation. And the presentation was given by the head of an architect firm in Boston. It happened to be a woman, and it was a woman-based firm, so everybody that worked there were women. And their approach was really done very well. They did a lot, so that, like, let's say they had a 10-acre parcel or something. They focused all the density and the housing in the middle of the acreage. And on the perimeter was the parking, the green space, community gardens is another thing, which is a big amenity for groups and that kind of thing, playground. So all that stuff was on the outside. They used much more pervious materials rather than impervious materials. They connected a variety of different types of housing buildings with paths to connect and to foster a sense of community. And it included the landscaping in that. And it just was, again, a lot had to do with changing, varying the heights of the buildings, varying the sort of step backs of the buildings, the materials of the building, so it didn't all look the same. It was all very different but coordinated, using lots of corner windows to let in more light to a lot of these things. So it was really very well thought out. So it can be done. In terms of the Marceline property in particular, I don't know if that property is that ecologically sensitive that it would be something to bring, say, the land trusts into to even talk about. But certainly, moving forward with an eye towards conservation is a plus.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
agree.
To Kathy's first point, a lot of the forums I go to, they always show pictures of two houses side by side, and one will have 12 units, and one will have 2 units, and you can't tell the difference. So to that point, yeah.
My personal story, which is very, very small, one of my first bosses in North Carolina had what I thought was a really nice big house on a big acre, a big lot. And I visited him a few years ago, and he brought me, spent some time with him. He brought me to his house, which is even bigger, nicer, newer house. And he was almost apologetic because his neighbors were right next to him. We walked through his house, and he was apologetic till we got to his backyard, which is about the size of this room, but it opened up into a large open area with walking trails that he could share. That was a shared property. And that's a hard sell on the Cape. Everyone wants to have their own unit, but that was, for me, a living example of how it worked, sharing open space with houses. That made a lot of sense, and so it was great for him. But that's something we need. That actually is going to take a lot of discussion to bring, because that's a tough discussion. Thank you, Kathy, for that. We'll let you look at the windows. I think we've gone through the agenda then at the moment. The only thing we've left open, and I've already buried it, I guess I've gone through it because I've lost it already. I think the only thing we have left is confirmation of our next date. And Brianna, you get back to us and moving that up a week so that, Jen, we can give some input before
You may be
then.
able to coordinate it before you
Yeah,
leave
that's what I
even.
was gonna do
Yeah,
right
yeah. So I should have something for you soon, by the end of the
Okay.
day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there, I think we've accomplished a few things today. What do you think? Are we?
I think we have.
And we'll follow up, I'll follow up with our, I'm sure, Mary, you'll be sure it's on the agenda on the select board to,
I think a week from tonight will be the real.
so we can reorg and we'll get,
I'll ask Michael to include that.
okay. So we'll cover that. And you want to contact patients and go ahead and contact Claudette and see if we can put her on the agenda to, well, she's been approved. We just need to have her start then. What we'll need to do is, Joe's not here, we'll need to talk to Joe and be sure that, what we can do is, we can, we just need to go back to the board and amend her starting date from July 1 to as soon as we can. You can
I'll ask Michael.
put that on the agenda too, and we'll move that, change the dates on her appointment, and then that will be covered.
Yep,
Okay?
great.
Thank you very much. I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, aye. Thank you very much.